Okay, well, welcome. I am so glad to have Dr. Sharrah Pharr with us today. She's the Director of Federal Programs and Grants for Hayes CISD. And Dr. Pharr, I will let you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role with the district.
Yes. So this will be my third year at Hayes Consolidated Independent School District as the Director of Federal Programs and Grants. Before this role, I was a statewide consultant with Texas Educational Consultative Services, and I oversaw several districts across the state of Texas regarding Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, State Comp Ed, Perkins, and various different funding sources, and helped districts with their comprehensive needs assessments and campus improvement plans. That experience was vital to my role now because I'm able to really navigate the conversations of federal and state law and marry the I guess you would say the bureaucracy piece and the legislation piece and the interpretation of Texas Education Code with when I was a practitioner. I was a former principal at Title I campuses and a teacher at Title I campuses. One of the things that we did here at Hayes while we were researching exactly what type of lab we want to build, because there's a lot of different ways to tackle that process, and it goes way beyond just looking at a catalog and going, ooh, that looks cool, I want that mission, that looks cool. We took a really in-depth look at the curriculum behind it and the correlation and the TEKS and which areas our students are struggling in when it came to Tier 1 instruction and science. And we picked students in individual TEK level and found a consistency and a trend. And from there, we were like, we decided, let's build a lab that addresses way to approach science TEKS. And TEKS are the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, and that's our curriculum foundation here in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Some people use Common Core and other curriculum sets. But we really looked at the alignment because we knew the kids were going to go to the science class, and we knew the kids are going to go to class, and we knew the kids are going to fight over here in their ELA class. But how can we bring all of those experiences together in such a way that they actually don't realize they're doing all of the TEKS, but they're doing lab projects, they're shooting off rockets, they're using solar cookers, they're creating structures. And so we shopped, I guess you could say, the missions and the different experiences the kids would be going through. Instruction, math instruction, and then a correlation of art TEKS, because we wanted to really emphasize the A in STEAM.
Mm-hmm.
So we looked at not only the cool factor of the lab and the experiences the kids would be going into, but what experiences would lend themselves to future success, not only on their state assessments, but their future, like you said, employability and career skills. The selection of the missions we did with our pathways, our career and technology education pathways. Whether we need an engineering connection coming up, or at the high school, do we offer horticultural science? We have different strands, and so that was one other layer that we looked at. One of the best testimonials that came out last year is we implemented one of the labs at a Title I campus. They have our second highest low-income population, and it is a dual language bilingual campus. And that means the kids are receiving instruction in English and in Spanish. And a little girl, about 4 weeks into it, she told the teacher, she's like, I want to be an engineer. And she's speaking all Spanish to the teacher. And she was just really energized to understand that there were these other careers out there, and they didn't even know these careers existed. And then later I was traveling with other kids doing walkthroughs, and it was a fourth grader, and they were telling, and the teacher had made mention, well, do you know what an algorithm is? And he confidently said, I do. We just learned that in the lab, and I was creating Egyptian structures, and we even used an algorithm to create our structure, and then we decorated it with hieroglyphics. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these vocabulary words were never into that child's existence until they
Yeah,
went through that experience.
that is so cool.
It's just fun to watch because of my role I oversee Perkins money at the federal high school level, and then Title I money at the elementary level. And it's really being purposeful with the building of it. I think the most significant impact you can make as an educator or a building principal or superintendent wanting to look for a lab is don't just create one to check the box. Yes, we have a STEAM program. Check one that will build that testimony of we have students that are ready for the workforce. And let me tell you how we started that all the way back in kindergarten. And what does this experience look like in first grade? Real world connection is the buzzword that everyone likes to use because it's always in the TEKS and it's always in every publication. Oh, this is real world experience. But they actually emphasize careers, and kids can visualize themselves as they're sitting in their lab coats with their goggles, and they see these people in books that look like them and sound like them, and they're like, wow, I can do this. So it's been real exciting. For our newest lab launch, we're going to be inviting bilingual professionals in engineering, science, math, some professors, and they're going to be doing our STEM extravaganza night to launch the new lab. And they're going to come talk to the students about why it's not only important to understand the language of science and engineering and art and math, but also to understand that language in two languages. And so we're real excited to take that next step in our development of the lab to support our English language learners as well. Okay, so districts across the U.S., we get Title I, we apply for Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV. There's a lot of different money that are involved in that. And so there's a lot, and I was going to break it down by different types of funding sources. If you look at the webinar slides that I provided, I clipped out some passages from what we call the ESSA program guidelines, and that really tells a person how and what you can spend Title I and II money on and what you can spend Title IV money on. The language has become a little bit more specific from the transition of No Child Left Behind to Every Student Succeeds Act, in that there's more emphasis on STEM technology and STEM education. So with that approach, we knew that we would have the latitude in Title I to prioritize it. Now, that is a very purposeful decision by our district. So a lot of districts, when I've worked with them in their Title I funding programs, they prioritize instructional coaches and interventionists and extra teachers and things like that, which we also do. But we did what's called a reservation, and you can take money off the top and you reserve it purposefully for a specific reason. And ours is to build a STEM lab. And each year we've been working down the ranks. We started with our highest low-income campus, which had about 93% low-income students. And we prioritized money towards that, the professional development of the teacher, the purchase of the supplies, the fixed assets, and the contracted services to outfit the lab. And then the next year, we did the same thing. We took the next campus with second highest priority. So that's why we have 3 now. We've done this for 3 years, and we do a lab a year. And so when I go to the webinar slides, it's interesting because a lot of people go, well, I don't know if I can or cannot spend the money on this. So in the first slide, it says intent and purpose, and I highlighted in blue the actual intent and purpose of Title I. And that simply brings the conversation to can or can't I spend money on this? So Title I Part A provides supplemental resources to LEAs, which are local education agencies, or your school districts, to help schools with high concentrations of students from low-income families provide high-quality education that will enable all children to meet the challenging state academic standards. There is a lot of specificity, yet ambiguity at the same time in that sentence. So Title I, we prioritized our low-income families. So again, we started with Hemp Hill and then Camino, and then now we have Blanco Vista, and we did that in rank order of low income. But we looked at the term high quality education and state academic standards. With the emphasis of STEM education and science and technology, we wanted to focus our funding on that high quality education. A lot of times people perceive Title I funds as remediation, as intervention, as the reactive way of supporting kids that are failing a course, and they get tutoring and they get their money prioritized for extra summer school and things like that. We decided to flip the model and be proactive with our funds and support Tier 1 instruction from the start. So it's a little bit different than some districts would do. The next slide really tells you examples, and this is all from that program guideline. It's very black and white. It says specific examples of allowable uses of funds. So in Title I, yes, you can spend it on research-based science programs, activities, or strategies. We built this lab with a lot of documentation to show, A, our district needs support in science and in math in these certain areas. I asked Dan Peterson, I said, shop me out a lab. I want you to take these peaks and I want to maximize the selection of the missions to meet these needs. And within a quick turnaround, he was able to say, here are some really good options. And this would give you a correlation of 85% in third grade and 92% in fourth grade. And we really just tweaked the missions based on that sentence, because I know the research that goes behind the development of the curriculum at Pittsco. And so we also track our own data, and I'll show that in a little bit. But the research-based science, and then you'll see that there's art, and that's really important as well. It's also considered computer-aided instruction. The kids are in charge of their own learning. They are in front of that module with the headphones, and they're having to facilitate their own learning. It also meets the mark for small group instruction, and the Pittsco also provides really in-depth professional development for the teacher that's facilitating the lab. So this little slide right here is the verbiage that we use in our campus improvement plan, in our expenditure requests, in our purchase order requests. I tie it all back to the black and white of the law. Can I spend Title I money on this? Yes, for these reasons. And so that helps people understand how to use, I guess, in a very simple way, this money towards that. We did receive our Notice of Grant Award. There's no problems with that. Our pass-through agency, TEA, Texas Education Agency, gave us the blessing. And so I just ensure that it's written in our campus improvement plan. And I have a way of saying, this is where we're starting, and this is where we want to go. In Texas and in a lot of states right now, there is a need for performance-based monitoring and performance outcomes. So if my students are starting out with a 42% proficiency in this particular TEAC, and I apply this strategy, or I apply the purchase of this lab, how will this increase the students? I need them to get up to at least 80% passing on this certain thing. So you can extract data points and say, This is why the lab was built around these teaks, and let's track it through our formative assessments every quarter in the district, and then our big state assessment at the end.
Do you have any preliminary results from
Yes,
the initial labs that were implemented?
yes, yes. So the very last slide in the webinar slide set. Now this was very rough, and because this was my guinea pig lab. This was our first time to implement. Plus, we also implemented the installation. I think it was like at February or March. So this was not an indication of a full year's experience in the lab. This just helped us, I guess you could say, within the system, understand how we are this year, 17, 18. What data sets are we really going to refine and measure? So this was a very rough way, but we launched our new professional development and our new lab this year focused on these certain peaks. And then we looked at the ones that were in matter and energy, force motion, and then we looked at the processing standards on how to analyze and interpret tools and data. So there, let me get to this. So you'll see in, say for example, the third grade CRES, that's Real Elementary School. We were in 14-15 way before the lab was even conceptualized. Our base was always around 54. And then 54% of the students were passing that particular TEAK. After the design and implementation of the lab, our base was starting to be 61, still below the standard we want. But, and this was on their science STAR exam. So this is the TEAK that was in the science STAR exam. This is the data set that helped us shop for what we wanted our labs to be. So this is what I would call our baseline data. At the middle of the year, we're going to be doing formative assessments on these exact TEAKs after the kids at all three labs have been in exposure to the lab for a full entire year, and we'll see their growth standard. And then we'll also, again, capture it at the end of the year, formally and with STAR exams and then informally with our in-house formative assessments. There's one more tab that I didn't show here, but we also did a cohort. So my third graders, when they become fourth graders this year, we're going to look at individual student growth and see if their experiences in the lab going from the third grade modules and now to the fourth grade missions, did they individually grow in those particular areas? So this is just one way of us looking at raw data and going, here's how we're going to design our baseline and how we're going to track success. And these were very purposefully built into the lab because these are the TEAKs district-wide and then campus-specific-wide are the ones that our students struggle with the most. So that's kind of the math behind everything going on and why the lab was, why we chose certain things. There's one more set of money that's new, and I should go back to my webinar slides up to, so we talked about Title I, and then there's Title II. So just in the quote, there's a line in there that talks about professional development, ongoing consultative services, and things like that. Districts can utilize Title II money for that portion of the purchase order. Oftentimes, principals or people in the business office are given the scary, you can't split fund, you can't split code expenditures, yada, yada, yada. Coupling Title I and Title II together on the same purchase order is not split coding. That's very different. The two monies do not supplant each other. They actually support and supplement one another. So we did not do it, but it would be an allowable practice to say, hey, all of the environment and the curriculum pieces and all the stuff, we're going to buy that with Title I. But the piece where we're contracting out for consulting services and professional development, we're actually going to pay for that part out of Title II funds. Sometimes that helps just be able to maximize different funding sources towards the same cause. There's a new set of money out this year, and that's Title IV, and that's on the next slide. It's new, so that means we don't actually know what the end result looks like at the end of the year and the compliance reports and how we're supposed to track things. But it too talks about well-rounded education and improving conditions for student learning. And depending on your district size, depends on how much money you get. The next slide, which is insanely too small, there's a section called Free and Program Description. And this is what I would refer districts to reviewing. If they really want to, they could spend, like our district gets, I believe we get about $30,000. So it's not that much. But I could say, hey, $10,000 towards this event is going to come from Title IV. Again, it's all about coordinating and integrating funding. But you'll see that there's supporting the creation and enhancement of STEM-focused schools, providing hands-on exposure to STEM. So I could have even split or coupled funding with Title II for professional development, Title IV with some of the stuff, and then even Title I for more of the curriculum pieces, and used all three of those money sources to pay for a lab. So it's really about understanding how you can work the money together to fund what you need. The biggest key to all of it is to identify in a campus improvement plan or in a comprehensive needs assessment that STEM is our priority based on this data set. We were able to do that with our science scores. Our kids need help with science. How can we address this in a high quality educational format using Title I? And so we made it a purposeful endeavor to take money, reserve money off the top to say we're going to do this. And it's been successful so far. Now, this is Texas when I speak to terms on this, and it may differ from state to state. We received a thing that says what you're allowed and not allowed to do with your money. So in that document that's called the, what is this thing called? This is the federal grant application in our the program guidelines. I think it's, I'm scrolling through, I think it's page 18. Let me look. It tells you what you can't spend your money on. And in Texas, there's even a deeper list of what you cannot spend your money on, like out-of-state travel, things like that. So when I look up something called the Administrative Grant page, they talk about infrastructure, furniture, like I can't drop a copper backbone and Wi-Fi and telephones, because they consider those items to be things the school district should be paying for because it's just basic infrastructure.
Yeah.
But because of the purposeful and unique way that the lab is designed, it is not necessarily furniture that you are buying, because I am not purchasing just tables to throw in the lab. I'm creating an environment for the students to learn in. Now, it was kind of like back in my day with pre-K and K. There are these little, and I juxtaposed the two positions because I got clearance from TA for this. So there's the question of, oh, well, they have kidney tables, right? The little kidney-shaped tables.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, we want to use our Title I money on that. No, that's a desk. But the moment you have, say, for example, one of the desks where the whole tabletop is a touchable device, like the whole tabletop is an interactive thing, that's no longer furniture. That's one big old computer sitting there, and the kids are, using the tabletop, the computer screen on top that's different. Or whenever it's no longer just a table, but now I have the sand and the water, and I have all the things that are inside, and it's a tactile learning center. That's no longer furniture. So it's the same kind of concept. I'm not just buying regular student desks. I'm not buying the typical furniture that I would be sitting on my classrooms with. I'm buying the entire earth and matter curriculum set and the things that they all sit down. I can put all that on one quote and say, I'm buying an entire system. This is a curriculum system.
Yes, yes.
And all of a sudden now it's an environment, it's a curriculum system. I'm not buying these same desks for every classroom in my whole entire school. That's when you would get in trouble, and that would be more supplanting, and I wouldn't be comfortable with that at all. But when I had it reviewed with TEA for this specific type of purchase, it could be reasoned to be allowable because of the specific intent and purpose. And you always have to come down to that question: what is the intent and purpose of the purchase? The intent and purpose of the purchase is to create a supplemental science experience to support Tier 1 instruction science. Okay, that's very different than me just buying a table.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not buying a table for the sake of buying a table and getting cheap furniture out of my Title I funds. So there's that's how you can reason it being different. And yes, I do call it the environment, the instructional environment. And it would be difficult for me to separate the experience that the kids get through, and then going out and trying to recreate that same experience just off the shelf. It just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we group it together and make that happen. My role as a federal program director, I have to do a competitive bid process or go get different quotes. And so, yeah, I shopped not only you guys, but I shopped many vendors and had a matrix on what do I want to see. If we were to develop a STEM lab, it needs to have these elements, and for me to be able to say, yeah, I want to purchase this. So we wanted synergistic learning. I wanted Tier 1 science support, the ability to extend the instructional materials to be bilingual translated later in-house. I wanted it to adhere to different differentiation styles. So seeing the material, reading the material, hearing the material and the videos, and then also just being able to work with another student, cooperative shared learning. So all of these different measurements, I thought this particular way of teaching elementary STEM was wow, very unique and innovative. This was really intriguing. So I think this is probably y'all's best program so far that y'all
The stream
presented
mission.
out. Yeah, it's awesome. When I did shop competitively and talk to other vendors and other programs, a lot of them were, well, this is what we offer. And I was like, okay, I get it, but that doesn't really address what I need. So just being able to take the time to talk to a curriculum division and all hands down to Dan. He is a one patient guy because I'm always throwing things at him. And like, hey, can you now correlate this to art for me? Because I need to make sure it's STEAM, not STEM. And do I have enough data to support this? And hey, here's the TEKs we really need to focus on this year. Can you send me a correlation? Because these are also really big expenditures, and they hit over $50,000. So in our state, we have to, by procurement laws, take this to our school board. We have to be able to say, hey, I want to buy this, and here's why, and here's what we're going to look at to be successful. And we do. We report back to the board. We report back on our compliance reports and everything else if this was successful or not. So just being able to connect, y'all kind of have the one-stop shop. I have curriculum support. It's like having extra staff members. When Trisha and Vance and Aubrey come out, I'm like, oh yeah, they're one of our staff members now. I'm like, I should give you a dust somewhere. I feel bad, but the comfort level that they provide the teacher and the follow-up and just everything. It's I don't know another vendor that can compare to that level of customization and that level of professionalism, and it's greatly appreciated. So it helped us make the decision of not only were we going to do one lab, because I started with one lab, and we paused and we said, what will we do to refine the next one? And that's when we went Missions 2.0. And then even between the installation at Hemp Hill to now Blanco Vista, we even tweaked a little bit more. And Dan was really helpful in getting my questions to the right people at Pittsco to come back with the right answers that I'm looking for. And there's no delay. I'm like, wow, you guys are fast. That's greatly appreciated as well. So it's great being able to make these fiscal decisions based on data. And it's not just prepackaged. It's definitely customized to our needs. And if I was in a different district and I was looking at their paper report, which is our big report that tells us how we're doing on all the exams, I may have shopped for different missions. I may have shopped for a different type of experience for a student to support that data net need. So that was huge for us to be able to have the flexibility of that.